Welcome to this iteration of the Plutus Pioneer Program. My name is Lars Brunjes. I'm the Director of Education at Input Output, and I am very excited to be your teacher for this course. So let's talk about the schedule first. The idea is to have regular lectures on every Thursday and then Q&A sessions on Tuesdays. And we will record the Q&A session, so obviously we have students from all over the world, so some of you won't be able to make it to the Q&A sessions, so don't have to worry. We will record them and you can watch them later. And you will also get the chance to ask questions in advance if you can't make it and ask them live during the session. In addition to those two things, the lectures and the Q&A sessions, we have our Discord server and we are using the Canvas platform. And I encourage all of you to ask questions and have discussions and talk with other students on those platforms. I mean, obviously there are a lot of you, so unfortunately it won't be possible for my team and myself to answer all your questions individually, even though we will try to do our best to answer as many questions as possible. So it would be great if you could help each other. And in the previous iterations of this course, that had worked out very nicely, and I was very glad, very excited to see how engaged the pioneers were and how they helped each other, and some spent hours helping fellow pioneers getting their environment set up and so on. So that was very nice to watch, and I hope it will be the same in this iteration. So Plutus is the native smart contract language of the Cardano blockchain, and this course is all about Plutus. So I try to teach you as much as possible about Plutus. So we will start simply by explaining the extended UTXO model today. That's the model that the Cardano blockchain uses and that Plutus smart contract uses. And that's different from how things work on Ethereum. Then we'll look at some simple contracts. We'll talk about native tokens, how to mint them, how to burn them. Then we'll look at on-chain code, off-chain code, at testing your contracts, various ways to do that, various advanced techniques like state machines that make it much easier to write smart contracts. And we will also look at how to deploy a smart contract. This is quite exciting. So in the first iterations of this course, that was before the Alonso hard fork. So Plutus was not yet deployed on the Cardano blockchain. So it wasn't possible to actually try it out on a real blockchain. So we had to be satisfied using the simulator and emulator traces and the Plutus playground, which are nice tools, but of course it's not the same as being able to doing something on an actual blockchain. So now we have the chance to do that, and I plan to at least briefly demonstrate some ways how you can actually deploy your contracts. But that also leads us to some of the challenges for learning Plutus. So Plutus learning is not easy. So I'm afraid this will be quite a tough course. I hope it will be fun and you will all learn a lot, but I don't think it will be easy. And for various reasons, and one of those is that Plutus is still very new. So it is available on Cardano. We have had the Alonso hard fork, but the tooling to actually deploy Plutus smart contracts and interact with them is still quite rudimentary, and the Plutus team is working very hard to make it better. So every week during the course, probably there will be improvements and new developments. So it's even now for me hard to say what the status will be at the end of this course. So it's a bit difficult to predict how we will actually be able to deploy Plutus smart contracts for this course. There are various ways how you can do it. All of them come with advantages and disadvantages. So I'll see which way I'll pick, or maybe I'll show you several ways when we get to that later in this course. So that's one thing. Because Plutus is so new, the tooling is less than ideal at the moment. Also because it's so new, it's difficult to find answers to questions online. I mean, normally as a software developer, if you have a problem, chances are very good that somebody else has had the same problem before and you can go to sites like Stack Overflow, or just Google your question, and often you will find an answer, and find an answer by somebody that has had a very similar or exactly the same problem. Obviously in Plutus, because you are amongst the first people in the world that ever do Plutus, it's not the same situation. So there's not so much knowledge collected yet that it's easy to find an answer. And we are all in this together. I'm also permanently still learning things, and as I said, Plutus is still changing, so the Plutus team is pushing updates every week, and so it's a rapidly changing landscape, and we are all together in this process of learning and figuring things out. One of the questions I often got in previous iterations of this course was about best practices, and my answer has always been, and it still is, that there are no best practices yet, because it's still very early steps, very early time. So people just now, some companies, some projects that want to build on Cardano are figuring out the best ways to do things. And one of the opportunities you have, or one of the things that would be nice if you could do that, is actually to help us find out what best practices are. So we are all together exploring the possibilities, and there's nothing set in stone yet, and a lot of things still have to be discovered by actually doing something with Plutus. So therefore it's important to actually try it, and even if it's something simple like a game or some toy project, just to use it and see what it can do, what problems there are, and then this way figure out how to do things in Plutus. So that's one thing, the fact that it's so new, which also means that tooling is not very good yet. So a lot of things are quite painful, more painful than you would expect them from, for example, Ethereum. Secondly, I briefly mentioned the EUTXO model, so the underlying model that Cardano uses, that Plutus uses. And this has a lot of advantages in contrast to, for example, the Ethereum model, but it's also not as intuitive. So which means that independent of the question whether you master the language itself, Plutus itself, just conceptually how to approach a problem, how to solve a problem, requires a different way of thinking than what you may be used to from other blockchains, which is not a problem, it's just different, or it's a challenge. So it means that some things that may be easy on other blockchains are hard, or at least have different solutions than what you may be used to. I firmly believe that the EUTXO model is great and has some great features, makes, for example, analysis of smart contracts, of security, much simpler, because basically all you have to do is look at a transaction locally, so you can forget about the rest of the blockchain. You just have to look at the transaction, its inputs and outputs, to understand what a contract can possibly do, which is very nice. But it also, as I said, requires a new way of thinking about how to actually write contracts and how to think about how to achieve what they can do. Another challenge is that Plutus is basically Haskell. So Plutus is Haskell. You write Haskell, and that gets then compiled to so-called Plutus core, which is the assembly language, so to speak, that actually runs on the nodes when Plutus is evaluated. And Haskell, of course, is not easy to learn for many. And unfortunately, I also won't have time, for obvious reasons, during this course, which is about Plutus after all, to spend too much time explaining Haskell. So you need to know some Haskell in order to do Plutus. Actually, there's like a little split between on-chain and off-chain Plutus. For on-chain, for the smart contracts themselves, the Haskell you need is relatively basic, so that's fine. But if you want to use the off-chain components, the so-called PAB, the Plutus application backend, then there are quite advanced techniques that are used to implement that. So there, the level of Haskell that you need to actually do that is a bit higher than if you just want to write smart contracts. And as I said, unfortunately, I don't have the time to first do a Haskell course. I mean, one of the things I did before I taught these Plutus Pioneer courses was to teach very long, like 10-week, full-time, 40 hours a week Haskell courses all over the world. like on Barbados or in Ethiopia or virtually in Mongolia. And obviously, you can explain a lot of things in 10 weeks full time. And even though I will try to explain some concepts of Haskell that are especially relevant for Plutus during this course, obviously there's much fewer time than if you could do a proper Haskell course first. Luckily, we did record the last Haskell course we did, the virtual Mongolia course, and we'll provide a link to where you can find videos. So if you want a much slower paced introduction to Haskell, want to brush up on your Haskell, then you can have a look at those videos. I already mentioned the tooling a couple of times. So one of the effects is that even if you are a seasoned Haskell developer, Plutus doesn't come with all the tooling you might have come to expect from Haskell. So some things don't work as nicely as you might be used to. For example, normally you're used to that in the REPL, in the Haskell REPL, you can easily get information, type information about expressions, look up the signature of functions and so on. And that is not so nice using Plutus due to the way Plutus works, because there's this plug-in into the compiler pipeline, the GHC Haskell compiler, that compiles to Plutus core. And the presence of that plugin, unfortunately, often prevents you from using these features that you maybe used to if you know Haskell, easily looking up types and signatures and so on. It's even not very easy to get Plutus to build in the first place. It has lots of dependencies and it's quite tricky to get all the versions right. So in this iteration, I will use Nix to do that, and I also later in this video explain how I build the example code that I'll show you. But even with Nix, it will at least take a while. So the first time you build the project, it will probably take an hour or something like that. Luckily, later then it will be faster, of course. Especially if you change something in the same project, then it will be very fast. And hopefully, even if you go to the next week, even though sometimes I will upgrade the Plutus dependencies, hopefully then it will be faster, because a lot of the things, of course, are reused between weeks. So as you can see, there are some challenges, but I think it's also very exciting. It's cutting edge technology. It's a very cool, very interesting programming model that Plutus uses, this EUTXO model. And you can do exciting things with it on the actual Cardano blockchain. So I hope we'll all together learn a lot and that you will really enjoy the course.